Okay, hopefully that will be back with you shortly. Twitch has once again twitched. And hopefully you will now be able to hear me. I'll just fluff a little bit until the obligatory advert is played. Sorry about that, I can't do anything about it. Not being a Twitch partner, I can't direct the adverts or start or stop them. Okay, hopefully everybody's able to hear me again now. So apologise for that. I don't know quite what it is. Hopefully it won't continue all evening. Twitch does seem to be a little bit twitchy. It was disconnecting me last night as well. Us European or us UK streamers do seem to have a little bit of a problem with the London Twitch servers. As I was saying, this is a white dragon. There is only one in the McCaffrey box. Therefore, it's able to tell uniquely which one it is. This is a dragon. It's a male dragon called Ruth. Because of that, we also know the name of its rider, which I've not. You might see there's a rider in the on the reference image down here. I'm not including the rider in this particular representation, but that rider is a gentleman called Lord Jackson. You can tell I like the books, I guess, because I happen to know the stories, and I do like the books. I like. I've read just about all the Anne McCaffrey books, and I do like her as a science fiction author. Unfortunately, I suppose I should say liked. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us anymore. But her son Todd McCaffrey has actually taken over writing stories about Pern. So the world itself will continue, at least for a while. Okay, what I'm doing here is just outlining the bone on the on this right hand side of the bone here, so that I can carve down to the background and then again round this bone off like I've done there. And it's kind of having to do it awkwardly from the perspective is I'm using here quite a tiny gouge. Because it's the only tool I've got which I can get into this area here at the top with. But using a gouge to do this is causes its own problems, and that is if I want to try and get a smooth area of wood like here, it's really difficult to do that with a little tiny U-shape. I don't know if this will focus, but it's it won't. It's a really tiny U-shape. I've got a larger version here of the same thing. This is a U-shaped gouge. This one in the handle is just a tiny version of the same thing. But the fact that it's smaller actually makes it even harder to create a smooth surface, because of the way when you create a groove and you're trying to take away material to the side of it, the tool keeps wanting to drop down into the groove it's just created, and you end up just making deeper and deeper grooves unless you're very careful. I'm very careful, but I'm not very good at it. Therefore I'm making lots and lots of deep grooves that I don't necessarily want to do. Okay, I can now switch, and I've done a little bit. I can now switch chisels here, and because I can get this larger chisel in at this point, I can do some of this with a larger chisel. Now, if you're not familiar with carving, there are problems with carving that have to be overcome whilst you're actually doing it, and that's mainly down to the grain of the wood. For example, I've come to a point here where my chisel has basically stopped. What it's really telling me is I'm cutting the wrong way against the grain, and it means I've actually got to come at it probably from the other side. The wood does give you a lot of feedback about whether it's being cut in the right direction or not. And I've got an area around here where it's the angle I need to cut it at is probably this one. Yep, that looks like it. But of course I can't actually get in at that angle because the bone's in the way. And what happens is, if I'm not going in at the right angle, the wood gets really quite rough. Yeah, it's a bit like you're rubbing the edge of the wood off as opposed to cutting through it. Now, it means you don't get a particularly smooth surface when you do that. It kind of opens up the grain of the wood, and I can see it as I'm doing this. It's not producing a particularly good finish, but I am highly limited by the angles that I can get at this area of wood with. Now, it does actually help. This isn't doing too bad. What I'm going to do in a moment is sharpen this chisel, and that will help in this area. The sharper the chisel, the less likely it is to sort of raise or rub the grain. It helps, it doesn't eliminate the problem. If you're carving the wrong way against the grain, you're carving the wrong way against the grain. The sharpness of the tool mitigates the effects a little bit, but it doesn't actually eliminate them. And I know you can't see it on camera, but I'm seeing a really rough area of wood here, and there is really nothing I can do about it, which is a little bit frustrating, but that's life, as they say. Webbo's Beast, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. What am I doing? I'm carving a dragon. You were doing what I was doing last night when you joined the stream. That and talking a bit more. Or were you actually meaning something else? Okay, so whilst I said I was going to sharpen this chisel, and I actually am sharpening it, or will be sharpening it, it's more of a polishing action than it is of a if you thought I was going to use a whetstone, for example, or an oil stone, I don't need to. They're actually too rough. So I'm actually using a polishing compound here. All that's happening really is the very fine edge on the edge of this chisel is being, generally speaking, most of the time it's just being bent over. Little bits are being broken away, but and that's where the dark sort of look of this strop is from. Is little tiny bits of metal being polished off the very point, but it doesn't take much to restore the really sharp edge. Now, this being a U-shaped gouge, it cuts over 180 degrees of a circle, if you think of a circle. So the U-shaped gouge is that, and the whole edge is a sharp blade. So in doing this, drawing the chisel backwards, I have to also rotate it whilst retaining the correct angle, so that I actually equally sharpen the whole edge, or both sides as well as the bottom. If I don't do that, ultimately what I'll get is a mal-shaped or malformed cutting edge, which actually won't work very well at all. And if I do get that occurring, that's the time when I'll actually have to get the whetstone out and reshape the tool. Now, people who have on the stream before will have heard this before, but hopefully you'll allow me to just say that say what I'm doing for the benefit of new people. Now, at the moment, what I have, having polished this side, what I've done is I've caused the very fine tip to curl over. I now need to straighten that out, and I do that by turning the tool over and using a profile here on this side and just dragging the tool backwards, and that drags the bent over edge straight, and I get a really straight, really sharp edge. How much is the wood? Well, I have got bits of metal all over this here. In the UK, Webber is beast. This piece of block of wood about this side is about £10. That's probably in the order at the moment of about $15. Yeah, plus your sales tax, plus their sales tax, shall I say. In euros, it's probably about €12, something like that, for a block of wood like this. It really depends on the size. Now, I think whilst I gave you the conversion factors, the rough conversion factors there in America, I think this wood is actually cheaper bought in America than it is actually bought in the UK. So, but I actually don't know. At the moment, it isn't a fantastically common wood to be found in the UK. A lot of the online stores, which is where I generally buy wood from, cater more to the machine-based carvers, or machine-based carvers, shall we say, or the larger mallet-driven carvers. So the wood is generally a harder wood. You know, they're using bowl blanks, for example. I don't have one around, but which is generally a harder wood. This sort of thing wouldn't be fantastically good for creating bowls, or I don't know, chair legs or anything like that. So yeah, okay. Then yeah, about £10, Webber. Sorry, it's a bit difficult sometimes remembering where everybody's from. About £10 for this. It was about an inch thick, and it's turn that ruler over. 8 inches by 6 inches. Yeah, and about an inch thick. It's for relief carving, it's probably a little bit thick for relief carving. It's not too bad. This particular piece doesn't works reasonably well with it. Relief. This is quite deep relief. Normally, you'd probably be working with something like 1/2 to 3/4 inch. So the wood would be a little bit cheaper then, obviously, because there's less volume. But it unfortunately it isn't a fantastic. It's not as easy a wood to find. As I say, normally you'll get a lot of the specialist wood suppliers. You can get some really nice fancy woods. You know, purple heart, pink mahogany, all sorts of colours, and tiger woods, and which are great if you're using a lathe, or creating bowls and things like that. But when you're carving with a hand chisel, they're not necessarily the best woods to use. From the perspective of them being easy to carve. As you probably weren't around, but earlier on in the stream I was just mentioning that the harder woods, like mahogany, tiger wood, they are quite nice woods to carve. I mean, you get some beautiful patterns, and they'll take a great deal of fine detail because they are quite a hard wood. But it takes a lot of effort when you're using hand tools to carve them, so it's kind of a trade-off. If I was wanting to carve that sort of wood, I'd be wanting to use either a mallet, or probably a reciprocating power tool of some kind. Now, I am lucky, relatively speaking, in that what I've got is I've got a Fordham quad horsepower shaft drive, and the handles for that, or you can get a handle, an end piece for that, which is a reciprocating drive, and with a small adapter, I can actually use the same chisels in the adapter, and so I can use these power driven as well. Now this is significantly sharper than it was before I sharpened it, which of course was the point. And this area here, which was causing me a little bit of difficulty with regard to the grain, the sharpness is overcoming most of the difficulty, and whilst I'm still getting a rough surface, I'm not getting as rough a surface as I was getting before. So it's mitigated somewhat. I kind of try when I'm carving not to get to the point where I don't really need to use something like sandpaper afterwards, if I can manage it. It's totally possible to do. You can get some, you won't be able to see it as well on the stream, but some of these areas that look quite shiny is literally because they are quite shiny, and that's just straight carving. Five views. Okay. Welcome to the 5 people who are watching. It varies, Webber. It varies. I'd still be streaming whether anybody was watching or not, because I do enjoy it. It might be a monologue, I'd be talking to myself, but that's quite, I don't mind doing that. At least I've got an excuse for talking to myself if I'm broadcasting. Captain Derby, welcome to the studio. Thank you for dropping in. I think I'm going to give this chisel a little bit of a polish as well. I don't know where the black bits came from, so rather than holding that over the when I sharpened the other chisel, I got some black bits on here. I don't know where they've come from. The possibility is that they are debris from off the strop here, and if so, they'll contain metal fragments, so I don't actually want them to embed into the wood, so I'm going to just go slightly off camera here, I'm afraid.